Good morning and welcome to Exploring Glorantha. I am JM, and with me, as always, is my Link or my rune priest, Evan. Evan, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you, JD? Jam?
I am wonderful. Like life is good, and gaming is awesome, and I am just glad to be here. So today we're going to be looking at uh, Pavis and Big Rubble in our kind of temporal space view, or not temporal space, our spatial view of Dragon Pass, what you're doing, where you want to go, what you want to do while you're there. So, Pavis and Big Rubble has always been fascinating to me because it really feels like the place where you can do a lot of the more classic adventuring motifs. Go into the dungeon, get the goods, bring it back to town. It almost exists in the same genre and space as Keep on the Borderlands, where you have the big ruins and caves of chaos, and then you have the keep that you retrieve to. But being Glorantha, the story goes so much deeper than just, hey, here's some caves with some monsters in it. And I mean, that's almost takes Snake Bite Hollow to a degree, but still has story to it. So we're going to look at this. Evan has put together our outline, which if you are a member of the Iconic Patronage, you're going to be able to look at the full thing. And he gives the list of resources that were pulled from. Obviously, Guide to Glorantha, the source book, the Wall of Daliath, Cults of Prax, the old Borderlands, and there was a ton of RQ Classic, RQ3, and hopefully RQG in the near future, Pavis and Big Rubble supplements. So, Evan, what do you want to add to this idea of Pavis and Big Rubble before we really get in?
So, um, Pavis and Big Rubble gives you a really good sort of place-based adventure. So, you know, dovetailing in with the sort of keep on the border idea, but it's rather than an isolated keep. I mean, you have a whole city. Now it's a desert city, an oasis city, but it's more like being on, sort of one of the far outposts on the Silk Road, where there is, a great deal of wealth and commerce and intrigue. And then right next door is this enormous ruin,
Mm-hmm.
where there are still people living there. There are, thriving communities, but also mystery, ruins, danger, chaos. So it is this great place for a an adventure, and sort of one-stop shopping in a very concentrated place. Like, you don't ever have to leave that particular area and have a very satisfying campaign. In fact, some of the campaigning in the RuneQuest Glorantha space really took place. Pavis and the Big Rubble, and the point of view character in the classic
Yeah.
RQ rulebook was Rurik Runespear, who starts out in Pavis and exploring the Big Rubble and going to a lot of the places that now you can take your adventurers to.
So we talked a lot about the space of Prax and how you have the steppes on the western side, and then you have beyond that you have Vulture country and the wastes on the east. Now, what divides that is this River of Cradles river valley, which in a lot of ways is sort of like the Tigris and Euphrates or the Indus River Valley, and the fact that it's the one, well, not the Indus, really more the Tigris and Euphrates, where it's this one strip of life in the middle of what is now a wasteland, right? A desert on one side, high step kind of on the other side, or step plains on the other side. And the reason it's called the River of Cradles, if you've been reading if you haven't, you need to go read The Prince of Sartar. But it's the River of Cradles because giants will send their babies in cradles down from the mountains, down along the river to the sea. And these ships are laden with goods and magic items and essential. It's really, on a complete side note, Evan, like we could delve really deep. This really feels like more of a God learners sort of topic. Uh, Ludo, if you're watching, like this is something maybe you want to unpack. But what's interesting, always been interesting to me about the giant's cradles is one, it has some very found child Moses sort of uh, resonances, like mythic resonances there, but also it's sort of an inverse of what we typically see in mythology, where it's the death that where it's the death of someone great that you have all of the goods and artifacts that are then buried with them. But the giants, they send the child out as a celebration of life, laden with what essentially would be grave goods in any other culture. These are now sort of birth goods. I also think of, oh man, what's his name? At the beginning of Beowulf, when he comes over the sea, he kind of has some of these goods that, he's the first king, and I'm gonna kick myself. If I had taken this show inside like I had planned, my Beowulf copy I could just pull off the shelf. But sadly, here we are. So there's a lot we could talk about on the river cradles, right? You've got Sun County. You have, again, can you still get the Borderlands and Beyond, at least the PDFs?
Yes, you
through
definitely
RQ
can
Classic?
get that. Yes, you can get the Borderlands and Beyond RQ Classic in PDF, and you can get Borderlands itself in PDF and print on demand.
Awesome.
So those things are available. They cover the Grantlands, which are a strip of River Valley being settled from the lunar provinces. Of course, this is earlier in the timeline when the Lunars are in charge of Pavis. And of course, we've advanced the timeline now to where the political circumstances have changed within Pavis and the River Valley. But you get a whole sweep of political and social change and upheaval that you can play with and play through.
Yeah, so we talk a lot. We've mentioned this term Pavis and the Big Rubble, and really it's a misnomer, because what we really have is we have New Pavis and the Big Rubble. The Big Rubble, this massive ruins structure, is actually Old Pavis. So, Evan, digging into your Lancor My archives, tell us about Pavis. Who built Pavis? Why is it now ruined? Why is it the Big Rubble? What is the story there? Because again, the point of exploring Glorantha is always to bring it back to, why should you take your game here? What's unique? What's interesting? What's awesome? And again, I just need to say, if you are a member of the Iconic Patronage, you get these outlines and these show notes, and they're enough to run a game. Just pick up Evan's show notes and head off to the Big Rubble with your group. So Evan, take it away.
All right. Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and we're just going to go completely off script in some ways, because we have my lovely outline, but really you have to pull from everywhere to tell this story.
Yeah.
So we begin in the Second Age, long ago, the Age of Empires, and there are two great empires in the world at that time: the Juristeli God Learners and the Empire of Worm's Friends.
Also,
and Dragon Pass. But big empires doing really interesting, crazy things, and both have their problems. But the God Learners establish a settlement on the coast. They are great mariners. And have sailed to all parts of the world, exploring and learning, and particularly acquiring magic and magical knowledge, understand and unlock the secrets of the universe. So they establish a colony called Feroda, and they see a couple of these giant cradles come down the river. And they explore at least one, and they find there's a giant baby and they have all these treasures and things. It's not a good thing for the giant baby. It never is. But then they find out that a lot more of these cradles have come down, but people up the river have intercepted them. So they decide that they should, build essentially a forward base to try and capture these things. Now, why are the giants sending these giant cradles with babies and not raising the baby up in the mountains where they're getting born? Some of this is mysterious, but essentially for the growth of these exceptional giants that are going to grow to the size of mountains if they mature,
Right.
they need to have their early growth, maybe even adolescence, in the underworld. So they are placing the baby in the cradle with all of these gifts and treasures, etc. And the goal is for the cradle to go down the river and get into the ocean and go down to the vast whirlpool in the middle of the world, Megastus Pool, and end up in the underworld where they have ancient agreements where there are beings that will see to the raising and growth of the child.
So it actually does tie in to the funerary rites, right? Because they are
Right.
literally sending their child to the underworld with the grave
That's
goods
right.
it would need for its next life. I
Yeah.
missed that in my
Yeah.
read-throughs of. That's awesome. See, this is why this show really is just for me to ask Evan a bunch of questions about Glorantha, and then Evan gets to answer them, and then I'm like, ooh, I will use this against my players. We just are just delighted that you guys would come along for the ride with us.
Yeah.
The ride down the
Thanks
river.
Yeah. So the giants have been doing this since probably before the beginning of time. They have an ancient agreement with the river god. But the river god is starting to not be able to protect the children. There are these nomads. There are horse nomads that are intercepting some of the cradles, and then the god learner sorcerers really get into the mix, and they build a place that they call Rob Cradle. I mean, how could it be any more?
It's not great.
They build a settlement on an island that will allow them to basically intercept everything that's coming down the river. And now we're not talking hundreds of cradles, we're talking a handful. But they begin to be able to snag every cradle. They make an alliance with the horse nomads, etc. The Praxian animal nomads are upset, one, that these these sorcerers, these outlanders, have come and set up shop and that they have allied themselves and are giving some of the goodies to these horse nomads, who, of course, the Praxians hate. So the Praxians build an alliance with giants, and they come in and they wipe out Rob Cradle, and they drive the horse nomads from. And then it is said that Waha, the great god of the Praxian nomads, convinces the giants to basically fence in the area where Rob Cradle was, in order to make it more difficult for anyone ever to come back to set up this kind of operation again. And so the giants bring these great worked stones and place them into the ground. So there's 20-meter walls all around where Rob Cradle used to be. Then the having sort of vanquished the invaders, much more active, and they are raiding across, attacking Dragon Pass and attacking other areas. One of the places that they attack is a little town called Adari, where an interesting experiment had been started by some people influenced by the Empire of Wormsprings. They decided to mate human and elf. which is these are not interfertile species.
Right.
One is a plant, one is an animal person. But through some great magic, they
A little bit of
produce
cross-pollination.
Yes, indeed. They produce an in who turns out Pavis. Now, Pavis, as a young person, suddenly has their town sacked and destroyed by the Praxians, and loses his parents, ends up in Dragon Pass, and there is some sort of utopian project, some attempt to return perhaps to the Green Age. This idea of Gennert's Garden is somehow bound up in this. And Pavis, as he grows to maturity, gathers about him a group of scholars, warriors, adventurers, and he is drawn to Prax because, again, it once was Gennert's Garden. And he investigates many secrets and learns many skills. We must imagine that he is hero questing, and he has, this special destiny. I mean, he unites Aldriami and humans together in his very being. He explores troll lands up in Degori Enkarth, and there is a huge statue called the Faceless Statue sitting on a throne. The trolls believe it's been there since before time began. There's some indication that maybe that's not the case. We're not exactly sure where the Faceless Statue came from, but Pavis wakes it up, and he and his companions ride this enormous giant statue into Prax, and he allies with a group of horse nomads, pure horse people. These are the ancestors of eventually the zebra riders, which they convert to their horses into zebras through magical ritual to become more palatable on the plains of Prax. But right now they're horse riders. They face the Praxians. They beat them at a battle called the Too Tall Battle, where the Faceless Statue itself fights an avatar of Waha and
Wounds him, right? Like
cripples him.
Yeah.
Yes, cripples him.
I remember reading the Borderlands book and just being enthralled with this story.
Yeah. So, I mean, so Pavis has defeated a god through his adventures, and then they take possession of the area around Rob Cradle, the Great Stone Walls. And the other interesting thing is, although he is half elf, he is also a great friend of a group of Mostali, dwarfs, and particularly named Flintnail. He convert this area, these rough stone walls, into a massive enclosure for a city. The Faceless Statue then collapses in the territory within the walls, and its various parts are used to refine the walls and magical organs, jewels and gems that make up its inner being and working. And these things are used to make temples, to make great magical artifacts. And Pavis uses his ties to the Empire of Worm's friends to bring people from Dragon Pass to start to populate his city. So this is in the sort of 830s, if we're talking chronology. And he sets up this jewel of a city that has protection for fields, for grazing. He invites various elder races to come and to live. He has dwarfs, he has Aldriami, who settle in a place called the Garden that is set aside for them. He makes many treaties, relationships, pacts. He even makes peace with Waha. He teaches the priestesses, Paps, special Aldriami magic that allow them to heal Waha. And at least for a time, there's peace with the Praxians. Waha leads his people into the wastelands, having been defeated. I mean, they feel they have to withdraw and rebuild strength.
All right. May I?
So,
May I?
yeah.
So Pavis thrives, and then this is one of my favorite god stories. Then the Praxians come back out of the wastes in 927 of the Second Age, led by a dental mystic named Jaldan Goldentooth, or Jaldan Toothmaker, who assaults the city and does so in a very unique fashion as he chews through the walls of the city with his dental magic. Nothing, no game setting at all approaches the weirdness of Glorantha. And it is beautiful weirdness because it's not just weird for the sake of weird. There's always something going on there. And Jaldan gets killed many times, but he keeps being reincarnated, being brought back by his cult, being brought back by people. In fact, he gets brought back to and eventually allies with Argrath during the Hero Wars. But he lays waste to about half the city and carries off a massive amount of Pavonians, Pavisites.
Pavisites.
We like. All right, Evan says Pavisites, so we're going with Pavisites. Yeah, sometimes when you're out in Prax, you might catch a bad case of the Pavisites, but usually it's just a matter of a cure disease spell, and that goes away. So the city struggles on for, I mean, about another 1,200 years, or not, sorry, 200 years. The rulers are is it the 17 foes of Waha are the
right.
sort of the rulers.
Yeah. So Pavis has this golden age under Pavis, and then Pavis retires to his temple. He is still there in some ways, but he has also ascended to be the god spirit of the city. He leaves behind a dynasty. These are people who descend from the pure horse people who become the zebra riders, the arrowsmiths. And
oh, did we lose you, Evan? I think we might have lost Evan. So I will continue on for hopefully we'll get Evan back here. I know. Hey Becca, good to see you. So yep, we have lost Evan. So I'm going to turn his camera off real quick, and you guys will have to enjoy the me that is I until Evan returns. So what we get is this Pavis falls into ruin. The Dragon Kill War happens. The Empire of Worm Friends is overthrown. And for a while, people flee out into the wastes. In 1237, the last of these leaders of Pavis, they're defeated, and this troll army that was part of this group that besieged them moves into what is now ruined Pavis and kind of takes over, seals the mighty gates with stone, and then basically begins to conquer the inner walls. So Pavis has fallen. This temple is sealed. There are trolls who are eating and slaughtering their way through Pavis. There's no help coming from the Empire of Worm Friends because Dragon Pass has been shut. And then we have this occurrence called the Dragon Newt Dream. We'll talk about the Dragon Newt Dream when we get into our discussion of Dragon Newts, but it breaks the troll magic that seals Big Rubble and allows people to start to come back in to Big Rubble. And we get several cities that kind of, like, Pavis is so large, there are small towns that get built up in it. The City of Thieves, people start attempting to move in and out of the city, claiming new territory. And my beloved co-host is back. Welcome back, Evan.
Hi there.
Much like Jaldon Goldtooth, though technological gremlins may slay thee, we will bring you back and reincarnate you.
I have returned.
So I talked a little bit about the last foe of Waha, the trolls moving into what is now the Big Rubble, sealing the gates. The Temple of Pavis is sealed so that, right, because Pavis is still there. And for a while, the trolls occupy Pavis until the Dragon Newt Dream, which breaks open the troll magic. And now we have people who are starting to come into Big Rubble. They're setting up little towns like the City of Thieves in here as they are starting to explore this once great Second Age city. So I will turn it back over to you, as that is where we left off.
Yeah. Well, let me just so the 17th foe of Waha that faced the trolls. Let's say his name, Ballister, because he is a very important person searching for where his barracks were, and especially his sacred axe.
That is actually one of the classic RuneQuest adventures, Ballister's Barracks.
That's right. That's right. And it's incorporated then it was a standalone adventure and then was incorporated into the Big Rubble pack. Anyway, so Ballister actually drives the Praxians away from Pavis, only to find that the troll army shows up and dies heroically, trying to basically in a rear guard action for people to escape and try and hide from the trolls. So they're there for a long time. The Dragon Newt Dream happens, breaks open the city, and it is once again divided in factions, but people can come and go from it. As the Lunar Empire in the Third Age starts to put pressure onto Dragon Pass, there are some who see that moving out, finding new opportunities, not right in the path of the Empire, might be desirable. So a Sartarite noble named Dorisar, he's a family member of the Prince of Sartar, and descended, linked to the royal line that goes back to Sartar. He explores the Big Rubble. He strikes it big. He gets a bunch of treasures, and goes back and he recruits a bunch of colonists, and he comes back and builds new Pavis outside the walls.
Yeah, so it sits on the outside of the Big Rubble, and this actually becomes a very hotly contested city for a while. When Starbrow's rebellion fails, Sartar sends many of the refugees going, you've got to get out of Sartar, head to New Pavis. The Lunars do not like this. Also, New Pavis has become a place of magical power, of magical artifacts. Cradles start coming down the river, and the Lunars are like, we want to take over New Pavis. And again, there's this I think it's where Prince of Sartar ends. We actually get to see Argrath defending one of the giant cradles. So what do the Lunars do? How do they screw this up for all good free folk?
Well, yeah. So they the Lunars are pushing into Prax in part because they are frustrated in trying to find a way to the sea by going through the Holy Country. They get defeated at a conflict called the Building Wall Battle, and they are trying to find a different way to establish a port, and maybe come around, swing around, and get the Holy Country by a different way. They are an expansionist empire, and they want to bring the light and truth of the lunar way to everyone, no matter whether or not they want it or not. So they fail an invasion shortly after they capture Sardar. They capture Sardar in 1602. In 1608, they lead an expedition into Prax, but they are turned back. Then 1610, that's just 3 years before Starbrow's rebellion. In 1610, they launch a second invasion, and they learned from all of their mistakes in the first one, and they crush the opposing Praxians, and Pavis gets the message, and they throw their gates. New Pavis throw open the gates and welcome the invaders, because they know that if they fight a siege against the empire, it's going to be a bloodbath. Very unfortunately for the ruling dynasty in Pavis, the line of Dorasar is extinguished by the Lunars. They don't want any local rivals. So, as is typical, they find and execute everyone who's tied to the old ruling line.
They do a better job here than they do in Sartar or Tarsh.
This is true.
Yes, they learn their lessons. They don't make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah, but it's also a smaller, this is just one city. It's tens of thousands of people, not hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that they're establishing control over. But it's a pivotal area for them. And then they start expanding down the River of Cradles, and eventually they establish a port. It's called Corfu. It is not super successful. It's in a swamp that's really not a great place to be, but they made it to the ocean. So, hey, mission accomplished. But they very much established themselves in Pavis, and like any good bureaucratic empire, they regulate the entrance and exit from the big Rubble. They start licensing adventurers, but you have to have a license,
right?
And you have to, declare what you found, and they get the first chance to maybe take some of the goodies, etc. This was all set up in Pavis, Threshold to Danger, and the Big Rubble, the Deadly City, the classic RQ2 supplements, and the pivot point for the Lunars and their success or failure really is when the first giant cradle appears again. And we learn in Prince of Sartar that the appearance of that cradle really is sparked by Argrath. Argrath makes an agreement with the giants that he will protect the cradle if they will send a baby. It's been centuries since an actual cradle came down the River of Cradles. He'll protect it, and then if he's successful, then he's going to establish an alliance with the ancient giants of the mountains. It is another thing to help build his power, like being the White Bull, like a whole variety of hero quests that he engages with in developing his following, like summoning Jaldan Goldentooth later on to help him lead the Praxians. So the cradle, the Lunars do everything they can to try and grab the cradle. They know of its potential value, of not just the things that are in it, but the secrets, the knowledge, and maybe if you have the control of a giant baby, maybe you control the giants. In any case, Argrath succeeds in defending the cradle from the Lunars. And this is a classic scenario that's available in Pavis, Threshold to Danger, or Pavis and the Big Rubble and Glorantha Classics. It is a big meat grinder battle.
It really is. Like, that thing is...
I would love to run it in 13th Age. I think that
Oh
would be
yeah.
would be, but but for RQG it would also be amazing. And Quest Worlds, or any other adaptation, you look at it through different lenses. It is this great combination of exploration, sort of building alliances, but also then just fighting a bunch of guys who are trying to take over this big boat that holds a baby,
Yeah.
a giant baby. Um, so uh, the failure of the Lunar administration to capture this prize really changes the politics locally, weakens it in many ways. And then Argrath shows up with an army, including Jaldan Goldentooth, who has conquered Pavis before, um, and uh, and he slaughters the Lunars. He annihilates them, and puts them all to the sword, and he becomes king of Pavis. And that's the status quo when we open in RuneQuest role-playing in Glorantha. He has taken the city. He has received the title, been acclaimed king of Pavis, and now he's in charge of the locality. There is a scenario pack coming to describe this, and I think a lot of it has sort of been explored in the White Bull campaign, which is the house campaign that Jeff Richard runs. They're in their third season on YouTube, and one of the key parts of sort of awards that Argrath gives to his followers is sort of parceling out the big rubble. It's like, okay, this area, you're in charge of that now. Whatever is there, you can explore, exploit, sublet, etc. So this is a new relationship. Instead of like a licensing and taxing regime, now you have this sort of fiefdom being handed out. And, of course, there are people there or things. You may have to deal with monsters. Maybe there's a bandit clan there. And on the one hand, maybe you want to kill the bandits, but the bandits have wives and children, and it's more complicated than that. So then maybe you need to win them over.
And it's really, I'm giving you the right to this land. Does everyone else in this land acknowledge the right? That's on you. I've given you access to this land.
That's right.
So let's talk about the big rubble. Let's talk about so we've given you if you're a new GM, hopefully this tells you why you should play in Big Rubble, and Pavis, and we'll wrap up with a really like detailed focus on, like we normally do. Why would you want to be from here? Why would you want to play here? Why would you want to run here? But Big Rubble has a lot of interesting places to go. So I'm going to talk about my favorite, Evan. If you don't, and we'll let you talk about one or two of them, and let's. We got about 20 minutes left. We're like right on track. If in case you haven't noticed, the way we kind of outline these shows is Evan gives all of the information, and then I'm like, okay, here's where we're going to guide the conversation. We usually spend the first half hour to 40 minutes talking about the lore because you can't, and we realize, hey, this can seem intimidating to new players, to new GMs of Glorantha. So that's why we're trying to keep it to an hour. We've just given you 40 minutes if you're like, I want to sit a game in Pavis and Big Rubble, but where do I look? What do I try to digest? Here you go. Here's 40 minutes of concentrated, here's what makes Pavis cool. And now we're going to talk about what we love about Pavis. You can clearly tell Evan is a massive fan of Pavis, which is great. Like this is why we do this show. So I really like the troll strongholds. Every time I think about doing a Pavis game, I want to take people into the troll strongholds. And it reminds me a lot of the first time I read The Temple of Elemental Evil. Becca's in the chat. She knows what I'm talking about. Where there's no way to clear. There's literally no way your characters can clear the troll rubbles. There are there are the 4 great clans, there are a ton of other clans. You and what army is basically the response. You can't clear out the Temple of Elemental Evil. There's 4 full massive factions in there. What you can do is you can go in and you can start figuring out what the alliances are. What is the political natures between the clans? Who do we want to ally with? Who are we neutral towards? Who do we think that, no, out of all of these things, these are the guys we actually have to deal with? How can we bring them into our fold? Because again, Glorantha is a nuanced world. Right there on your character sheet, you have Ransom. No fight needs to be fought to the death, because as soon as blades are drawn in RuneQuest Glorantha, people start dying, limbs go flying. It's why the Arnalda's phrase is there's always another way. Yes, violence is always an option, but there's always another way. And I feel like the troll strongholds are really, for me, what sticks out at that. I also love all of the temples in there, and it's not just trolls. There's the gardens that have like this elven enclave. There's a dragon newt temple in there. If you want a microcosm of everything that's weird and awesome in Glorantha, as Evan said, go to Pavis and Big Rubble, get the RQ Classic, and you never need to leave, and you will see everything weird and wonderful that Glorantha has to offer. So that's my favorite parts of the Big Rubble. Evan, what are... I gotta say, I pulled out, after I got the outline, I definitely was looking through the outline. I was like, oh, I had to pull Pavis and Big Rubble off the shelf. And I was going back and looking at all of the old notes I had written in my copy of Pavis and Big Rubble and going, yeah, maybe my next RQG campaign will take place here, because it's just so great.
Yeah. Well, so I love the weird and esoteric place, the Puzzle Canal. So off of the river, built by a mystic, someone described as a demigod priest from the Empire of Worm's Friends, a man named Labragon, is a canal that is a maze, that is a puzzle filled with illusion, mystery, magic. You might experience it as just sort of a dungeon crawl. There's monsters and things. Maybe there are traps. Maybe, but we also know, for example, from the Prince of Sardar webcomic, that Argrath entered the Puzzle Canal, and something in it made him realize that instead of doing what was expected in a particular hero quest, which is a quest where you steal a cauldron from a god time individual called the Drinking Giant. You steal the cauldron, and normally you would take it back, and that cauldron would have benefits for your tribe or your clan. But instead, he had a revelation within the canal, which made him realize that there was something bigger that he could do with this. And so he takes it as an offering to the giant Gon Orda in the Rockwood Mountains and makes this deal to protect the child of the giants. And this sets things much bigger into motion. So there are all sorts of connections and mythological revelations that you might have in traveling through this canal. Now, you might be just experiencing fighting monsters or experiencing old traps, but this was built by somebody who was at the height of their power during the height of the Second Age, and they had insights not only from the Empire of Worm's Friends, but also from the Godlearners. So anything that you want to, pepper in there to really mess with your players, or to lay a breadcrumb trail for other adventures, whether they be in the other world or whether or not there are other locations in the Big Rubble, or even beyond in the Wastelands or in Prax. those clues could be placed there, and it could be a place of adventure. It could be a place of madness. It might be a place of illumination. And I just love this location, and its deep connection to sort of everything that's magical and kind of crazy about Glorantha.
I think that comes through, Evan. Like, I think we both love Glorantha, but we both get excited about sort of different pieces of Glorantha. Like, I'm really looking forward to doing our, basically, I think it's going to take us a year to actually go through all of the different god time eras and then the actual ages, because there's so much to cover.
Yeah.
Glorantha is one of those things that the deeper you go, the more you find. So let's talk about why to play here. My favorite thing about Pavis and Big Rubble is if you want to get into Glorantha and you are coming from, let's call it a more 20-sided die version of role-playing, this is the place to go, because there are dungeons, there are traps, there is treasure. The Big Rubble is a giant dungeon made up of small little dungeons. You know, it's a ruin made up of ruins. And so if you're trying to get your players to transition from a Fantasy 20 game, an F20 game, into Glorantha, setting a game in Pavis and Big Rubble keeps a lot of the familiar tropes and themes while clearly being in a Gloranthan setting. I've never actually tried to run, I mean, I know we've got 13th Age Glorantha, but with a little minor tweaks, and even if you don't care, you could run Pavis and Big Rubble in whatever version of F20 you like, and yeah, would it be 100%? Probably not. It wouldn't give them that Gloranthan experience. But if you can get them hooked on the setting, and then say, hey, there's this other great system that is really more in tune with the world, that's a good stepping stone. Pavis and Big Rubble is a great stepping stone moving forward. The other thing that I love about it is, if you are a Gloranthan nerd, Pavis and Big Rubble is tied to one, basically all of my favorite RuneQuest Classic supplements. You have, as Evan said, you've got Ballastor's Barracks, you've got the ties to Argrath, you've got the River of Cradles, you've got Borderlands, you have Griffin Mountain, right? Because that's where Argrath goes to make the deal with Ganorta. You have all of these things on the cusp of the Hero Wars. So if you're a Glorantha nerd and you want to start your campaign a little earlier than RQG, this is the place to start it, because your characters or your characters' children and grandchildren, by being in Pavis, they're kind of at the epicenter of the events that are going to shape the whole of the ending of the Third Age. So that's why I think as a GM, I love Pavis and the Big Rubble. Evan, what about you? What are some things that you really want to highlight for GMs and players? I'm trying not to steal all of your thunder off the outline.
Yeah. No, the other thing about Pavis, all of those things are true and absolutely awesome, and things that I've explored with some of my players in the past. Also, to go really deep, somehow there's still this utopian plan that Pavis tried to put into effect. Something that that maybe is going to come to fruition during the Hero Wars. That old Pavis was built to recreate the ideal world of the god time before all the bad things started to happen, the Green Age. And that's why he had elves and dwarfs. And although the trolls, the vast majority of the trolls invaded later, there were trolls in old Pavis as well, and the dragon newts. And somehow laid out in this city design there's something that's still running. There's a subroutine that Pavis put into place, and he's still somehow present in his temple, overseeing something bigger than just building a city, but something that might be the next stage of the renewal of the world. Of course, there's great danger in that too. Chaos has invaded the big rubble. There are all sorts of really terrible chaos things,
horrifying chaos things, and
and
unique, unique things that you will only ever find in the big rubble.
That's right. And so, those are great for the, dungeon crawling, going through caves and horrible chaos lairs and everything. And so everything is at peril and on the cusp as well. And so I really like those themes. And, obviously if you do it right, you dole out this information, and you and your players do not have to be an expert in all of Glorantha to start it out, but to have this idea that there's a bigger picture going on here, and then fill it in, vary your Glorantha, because I don't know if we're ever going to be told exactly what Pavis's plan was. So it's really what you see for your game. What is the end goal here? Are they building just a little utopia, that's going to be in a dome? Are they trying to build something? Is this like Star Trek II? Are they creating the Genesis device that's going to, repopulate the Gennert's Garden across Pavis? Across Prax and the Wasteland.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You tell me. I think that there's so much potential there.
So, Evan, my friend, if you want to get into Pavis, if you're a new player or GM, first of all, you don't get a lot of information in the RQG book. They do have a Pavis Big Rubble supplement coming out at some point in the future. I think Robin Laws is working on that. So it promises to be amazing. Where might a aspiring GM find this information that we were talking about, aside from delving the Guide to Glorantha or the Gloranthan Sourcebook?
Right. Obviously, there's the Gloranthan Classics, which are available PDF, most accessible, but you can get print on demand on those, and those are just exceptional supplements.
They stand the test of time. Yes, you'll have to do a little bit, but honestly, the difference between RQ2 and RQG is negligible in the GM prep side of things.
That's one of the things that the backwards compatibility that they focused on. It creates some anomalies for RQG, but it's all worth it to be able to just pull those old things in. So then, of course, there are enterprising individuals who are publishing new things. They're not waiting for Pavis and Big Rubble to come out in its new form.
We have an announcement about this as soon as Evan is done doing his tour.
So, Johnstown Compendium has a number of supports. I'll end with the one I think links to our announcement. There's an adventure called The Darker Shade of Night. It involves Ballister's axe and threats to Pavis. So check that one out. There are, if you need NPCs to help you run that are RQG NPCs, there's a whole booklet of them called Rubble Runners with backstories and lots of adventure hooks. If you're trying to get a hold or an idea of all the information out there, someone's created a table of contents, an index of all of the published sources. Some of those are still available. Some of those are hard to locate, but basically it's called the Table of Contents for Pavis, Big Rubble, and the River of Cradles. And then if you need maps and adventures and ideas, particularly some wonderful modular maps for ruins, there is a series called the Rubble Redux, and it has two supplements out so far. One called the Insula of the Rising Sun, and one called the Insula of the Waning Moon. And Insula is a block of housing and shops. It's basically taken from sort of the archaeology of places like Roman cities, a way to sort of explore a neighborhood. And these are really fun and inventive and reusable. A lot of reusable content in these in these two publications.
And that brings us to our contest, our announcement. Neil, one of the guys behind what is called now the bundle, the Return to Big Rubble, has offered to give away a bundle of Return to Big Rubble from for viewers of Exploring Glorantha. We're going to be running a contest between now and the end of the month. A giveaway, I think. It's the technical way I have to term this. We're going to be running a giveaway. We're excited about the Return to Big Rubble release on Drive-Thru-RPG. It's got both of those titles that Evan said. It's almost at Electrum. It may actually be at an Electrum level right now. So we're going to run a contest. We're going to give away a free version of one of these. To do this, you must enter so that we know. So the way this works is you're going to respond, like this post, and leave a comment on. We're going to put it out on Twitter. We're going to put it out on Facebook and Instagram. You leave a comment. The more times you like and leave one entry per platform per person, so you can get up to 3 entries. Leave a comment telling us with whom you would like to play the Return to Big Rubble with. So tag your group in it. Tell us, what dead celebrity you would most like to play Return to Big Rubble with, and that gets you an entry. And we will be announcing the entry next month and Exploring Glorantha, who won our contest, and that will be we're going to be doing Esrolia. It's going to be a pre-recorded episode, so not as much interaction, but we're going to record that. Evan will actually be here in Texas, and we will be playing 2nd edition D&D the weekend that we're supposed to be releasing this. So it will be recorded in advance, streamed here for you. We're going to talk about Esrolia, the land of, is it 10,000 goddesses?
10,000 goddesses.
Yes, I know my Glorantha. As I said, I've never claimed to be the Lankor Mai initiate in this partnership. I'm definitely the Isseries. I'm the Talking Gods acolyte in this. So that's our big announcement. That wraps up Pavis and Big Rubble. We'll be back next month with Esrolia. Evan, thank you so much for all of your hard work and just for, honestly, I if we weren't doing this so early in the morning, I would just have a glass of whiskey and be like, Evan, tell me the tale of Pavis and the faceless statue again. That's the one I want to hear the most. So we will be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central, and we will be doing our look at the director's screen pack and double tap for Nice Black Agents on the Iconic Production channel. If you're here, come hang out with us, and then Torg on Tuesday, and we'll be starting our new series on Behind the Screen, looking at science fiction genres and how to replicate those at the table. So, as always, Evan, it is always a joy to talk Glorantha with you. Thank you for exploring Glorantha with me. Thank you for the behind-the-scenes work that it's my job to streamline down to an hour and leave all of your favorite children on the floor. I'm sorry, but if you're a member of the Iconic Patronage, you get all of those cradles that get sent down the river that I, as the Lunars, strip mine for magical information. You get all of them. You can be Argrath and save Evan's outline cradles. So, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I am JM. This is my wonderful co-host, Evan. And we will see you all in a month for more Exploring Glorantha.